to do the cutting out. The front and the back is going to be cut on the fold, and the whole lot, including our bias binding, is going to be cut on the bias. That is the 45-degree angle across the fabric. So we're not cutting straight, we're cutting straight across it. And that way we get a lovely stretch in our fabric. When you look at it on the hanger here, hello, you can see how this actually stretches over the body when it's put on. And that's almost like working with jerseys. So that is what the bias does, and it's really fantastic. So we're going to cut this out now.
First, we have to put our pattern together, and we have got the letter format and the DIN A4 format. So in America, you print off the US letter size format, and the rest of the world, you print off DIN A4. And then you can put your pattern together. Make sure that you check the scale. You'll notice that all my patterns have attachment lines, and then also we have got markers there for each size. You can cut the size out straight away. They go together in alphabetical order, so you start with A, B, C, D, E. So you can put them together actually in the smallest of places, which is why they're so good, and they waste a lot less paper than the commonly used multi-size patterns do. So once you've put your pattern pieces together, you should have the front, the back, the armhole binding and the neckline binding. Both the front and the back are cut on the fold, and it is really advisable to make yourself a complete pattern piece. So copy it out again, sellotape them through the center so that the cutting out is actually easier to do. So that's my recommendation there for you. Now, if you want to shorten or lengthen your dress, you don't want to change the hemline at all down here. Yeah, we're leaving that exactly the same. Now, if you want to shorten it, you want to make sure that you don't make it wider. You take whatever length you want to shorten it by. You can measure from the top of your shoulder down and see how long you want it to be. For me, at height 5'2", that's 1.60 m, for example. Taking out 20 centimeters is absolutely perfect length for me. But of course, if you're a really tall person, you might not want to take out any length at all. And then I would recommend that you just put them together with a few pins instead of sellotaping them, so that when you make a longer version, you don't have to print anything back off and it rips when you take it apart and that sort of thing. You must make the side slimmer, otherwise it comes out too wide at the bottom, right? So you just fold that over as well, and then you can pin that, and you have your shortened pattern. This is a really nice length for a top. The other one is more like for a slip or for a nightie. It goes to the mid-thigh. Young girls like it short like that. I think I would always add a little bit more to make it into a proper dress. And then on the other side, you do exactly the same. You measure how much you want to shorten it by, and then shorten it just like I've shown you. Check that the side seams are exactly the same, so that you don't end up with one longer and one shorter, obviously. And once you've done that, your pattern is prepared and you can start cutting out. When you're cutting out, you can just fold over one side at a 90-degree angle of your fabric so that you get the 45-degree angle. Pin on your pattern pieces, and like I said in the introduction, it's a really good idea to starch them first so you don't have trouble cutting them out. It's always better to cut from the left, but sometimes you cut from the right like I do here, and then you want to lift with your left hand the fabric and the pattern up, and that way you can get round without jaggedy edges, which we don't want. And I do think that if I had a complete piece here, which I will do after this as well, because it really makes sense. I love this top. I'm going to make loads of these. So it makes sense to have it fully doubled out and then just cut the whole front and the back so that you can see exactly how much fabric you need. And I can do the same for the back. And you have got a corner where you can cut out your bias binding. And for the armhole, you need 2, so you can just fold that over. But first of all, I would just cut the neckline bias, pin it on really well, and then cut it out. And again, it is much easier when it's starched. And then we've got the armhole binding. And you can see that the binding has got the 45-degree angle in there as well at both ends. That means that when they're put together, you don't have the seam sitting on seam, which makes the whole thing look more professional and flatter. So I'll cut that out as well.
Bias binding is 4 centimeters wide. You can make it slimmer. That really depends on the look you want to achieve. If you want to put your bias binding on so it rolls from the outside to the inside, then I would suggest you reduce it to 3 centimeters. If you want to have it just like I use it there, then you're fine with the 4 centimeters and you can leave it as it is.
And here you can just very quickly see a slimmer bit of binding for another top that I'm going to make. And you can see it is much, much slimmer. This is only sort of 3 centimeters or even 2.5. And if you wanted to turn in your binding, that really is ideal. It's a good idea to keep all the stuff you've cut out in freezer bags, preferably with a zip, so that you can lose any of them and then put them to the side, and when you're ready, you have got your pieces all together.
Now we've finished the cutting out, we can start sewing together. Our next step will be to sew the neckline and the shoulder seams.